What if I told you that by this time tomorrow, you could have a completely different ecosystem living inside your body? We've all heard the phrase, you are what you eat, but usually it comes with a warning. Give it 3 months. Be patient. Wait for the results. Most of us believe that changing our internal health is a slow, gradual process. Weeks of effort, months of consistency before anything meaningfully shifts or we notice real changes. We're often told that what you eat today doesn't really matter unless you keep doing it for a very long time. But what if some changes inside your body happen much faster than we expect? What if the trillions of bacteria living in your gut, the microbes that influence digestion, immunity, and even mood, are far more responsive to what you eat than we realize? In 2014, researchers at Harvard University and the University of California, San Francisco published a study in the journal Nature to test exactly that question. What happens inside the gut when people suddenly change what they eat? Not over weeks, not over months, but right away. Instead of focusing on long term diets, the researchers designed an experiment where people would switch their diet dramatically and the gut would be tracked day by day. The idea was simple. If food truly influences the gut microbiome, we should be able to see changes as they happen, not just at the end. Before we go further, let's pause for a moment. Inside your gut lives a vast community of microorganisms, trillions of them, mostly bacteria, known as the gut microbiome. These microbes help break down parts of food that your body can't digest on its own. They produce molecules that interact with your metabolism. They also communicate with the immune system and even with the brain. What's important here is this: these microbes rely directly on what we eat. Different microbes thrive on different types of food. So, when you change what you eat, you're not just feeding yourself, you're feeding some microbes more than others. The big question is, how fast does this microbial balance actually respond to diet? To answer this question, the researchers recruited 10 healthy adults. Each participant followed two very different diets, one at a time. One diet was entirely plant based, rich in fruits, vegetables, grains, and legumes. The other was entirely animal based, focused on meat, eggs, and cheese. These diets weren't just different, they were nutritional opposites. The plant based diet was naturally rich in fiber and lower in fat and protein, while the animal based diet was high in fat and protein and contained almost no dietary fiber. This stark contrast made it easier to see how quickly gut microbes respond when their food supply changes. Importantly, the same individuals followed both diets, each for 5 days at different points in time. This allowed the researchers to compare how the same body responded to different foods. During each diet phase, researchers collected daily stool samples, allowing them to track how the gut microbiome changed day by day. This design made it possible to observe how the gut ecosystem responds in real time as food choices change. So, when did the gut microbiome actually start to respond? The researchers didn't have to wait until the end of the 5 days. Changes in the gut microbiome appeared within the very first day of switching diets. In other words, within about 24 hours, the microbial community in the gut had already begun to shift, responding to the new foods being consumed. This means that the gut microbiome is not a slow moving system that only changes after weeks or months. It's highly responsive and it begins adapting almost immediately when what we eat changes. So, what exactly was changing inside the gut within those first 24 hours? The gut microbiome began shifting in ways that reflected the type of food being eaten. On the plant based diet, microbes that specialize in breaking down plant fibers became more active. On the animal based diet, microbes that thrive in high fat, animal rich environments increased instead. In other words, the gut microbiome changed in a targeted and predictable way based on the nutrients entering the gut. This shows that gut microbes are not passive passengers. They actively reorganize themselves depending on what we eat, and they can begin doing this within a single day. But this raises an important question. What was driving these rapid changes inside the gut? The answer lies in the animal based diet. It triggered faster and more pronounced shifts in the gut microbiome. And this wasn't just because of new nutrients. As you can see here, when people switched to a diet high in fat and animal products, the body released more bile acids to help digest those fats. But bile acids don't only aid digestion, they actively shape the gut environment and influence which microbes can survive and grow. Some bacteria are well adapted to bile rich conditions, while others are sensitive to them. On the animal based diet, bile tolerant microbes increased rapidly, while bile sensitive microbes declined. In other words, by changing the gut environment itself, the diet drove rapid shifts in the microbiome. Beyond changing which microbes were present, the diets also changed what the microbes were doing. On the plant based diet, microbes focused on breaking down complex plant fibers as their main energy source, leading to the production of short chain fatty acids, compounds that help support the gut lining. On the animal based diet, where fiber was largely absent, microbial activity shifted toward metabolizing proteins and amino acids instead. In simple terms, the microbiome adjusted its activity based on the fuel it was given. The researchers also observed that microbes and viruses naturally present in foods appeared temporarily in stool samples, highlighting just how directly our diet connects to the gut ecosystem. So, why is the gut microbiome able to change so quickly? The researchers suggest this kind of flexibility may reflect our evolutionary history. For most of human history, food availability wasn't stable. Some days were plant heavy, other days included more animal foods. Microbial communities that could quickly shift their function would have helped humans extract nutrients from whatever food was available. In that sense, a responsive gut microbiome may be an adaptive advantage, not a flaw. Importantly, when participants stopped the animal based diet and returned to the usual eating habits, the gut microbiome began shifting back toward its original structure within about 2 days. This tells us something important. The gut microbiome is dynamic, not fixed. At the same time, this study looked at short term dietary changes, not long term health outcomes. It doesn't mean that one meal or one short diet determines gut health. It also doesn't say that one type of diet is good or bad for everyone, or that one diet is inherently better than another. Different bodies, lifestyles, and contexts matter. What this study really highlights is flexibility. Our gut microbiome responds continuously to what we eat, and small, consistent choices over time are likely more important than any single day. So, while the gut microbiome can respond quickly, it isn't chaotic or completely reinvented every day. A more recent controlled feeding study from 2022 looked at how the gut microbiome behaves day to day, even when people eat very similar meals. What they found was reassuring. While microbial activity can shift quickly, each person's gut microbiome still maintains a stable, individual baseline. In other words, rapid changes happen, but they happen on top of a personal microbial foundation, not instead of it. In that study, when people ate the same standardized diet day after day, their gut microbiome became less variable from one day to the next. This suggests something important. Diet doesn't just cause rapid shifts, it can also stabilize the gut microbiome when it's consistent. So the gut isn't just reacting wildly to every meal, it's constantly balancing short term responses with longer term patterns shaped by habit and routine. So, why do these findings matter? Taken together, they challenge the idea that short term choices don't matter at all. They suggest something more nuanced. The body is constantly listening. Biological systems respond rapidly to environmental inputs, and the gut microbiome, in particular, can respond to what we eat within a single day. Food is not just fuel, it's one of the strongest signals we send to the body. What we eat communicates with our biology, shaping the gut environment, microbial activity, and metabolic responses. Over time, this means small, consistent choices can matter more than we often realize. Sometimes the body listens faster than we expect.